Welcome to Module 2 of Astronomy based on Genesis 1, and it is a study of the biblical calendar and worship time. The biblical calendar must meet these rules of evidence, rules of correspondence, in order to be the true biblical calendar. So one must ask, is it biblical, astronomical, chronological, historical, and based on the spirit of prophecy guidance? Module 2, again, is based on the method of true education. In Isaiah chapter 66, verse 22 and 23, we see that on the earth made new, we will keep the Sabbath based on the biblical calendar of the new moon, and as well the sun and the stars. For as the new heavens and the new earth which I will make shall remain before me, says the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, said the Lord. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 539, reminds us about the biblical feast and also the fact that it's based on agriculture. On the second day of the feast, the first fruits of the year's harvest were presented before God. Barley was the earliest grain in Palestine, and at the opening of the feast, it was beginning to ripen. A sheaf of this grain was waved by the priest before the altar of God, according to Leviticus chapter 23, verses 10 and 11. This study has been prepared for Generation 144K by 144,000teachers.org. Astronomy and Genesis 1, Module 2, and the Table of Contents. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 reveals, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Astronomy, as found in Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 to 19, illustrates the fact that the Creator appointed the stars, the sun, and the moon to do the reckoning of the biblical calendar. In Module 2, we will be studying the geography of the sky and how to use a planisphere and recognize the ecliptic line, which is the path of the 12 constellations in their seasons, which is called the Mazzaroth in the Bible. Psalm 19, verses 4 to 6, and Job chapter 38, verses 5 and 32 revealed this wonderful truth. Astronomy and the biblical calendar can be found throughout the whole Bible, but more specifically in the books of Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus. Astronomy and the appointed times also demonstrate the exact time to worship the Creator. We want to also show the major difference here between astronomy and astrology. This study is a study of astronomy, not astrology. And here are the specific reasons why. Astronomy, the study of objects and phenomena originating beyond the Earth's atmosphere, is a science and is a widely studied academic discipline. Astrology, on the other hand, which uses the apparent positions of celestial objects as the basis for the prediction of future events, is a form of divination and a pseudoscience having no scientific validity. Astrologers, which practice astrology, believe that the position of the stars and planets determine an individual's personality and future. Astronomers study the actual stars and planets, but have found no evidence supporting astrological theories. In Part A of Module 2, We are looking at Genesis 1, the first mention of the biblical calendar reckoning based on biblical, astronomical, chronological, and historical rules of evidence. On the first day, according to Genesis chapter 1, verses 3 to 5, the Creator said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And he divided the light from the darkness. The light he called day, the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. In Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 to 19, now, the Creator of the light, the stars, the moon, the sun, appoints their roles or purposes. We read, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also, and God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the fourth day. As we see in Genesis 1, definitely the biblical calendar is set up by the Creator himself in the firmament of the heaven. First, to divide the day with the sun from the night with the use of the moon, and let them be for signs by the stars, and for seasons by the moon or month, which is the same word in Hebrew, for days, again by the sun, and years by both the sun and the moon. The other appointment, of course, is to give light upon the earth. Those two great light, again, a kind of a repetition to make it more clear, the greater light, which is the sun, to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night, that's the moon, and the stars also. And again, God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night. When God repeats himself, we better listen. And we can see again that this is definitely the appointment of the light by the Creator himself, but it's also establishing in the fourth day the part of the hebdomad, which is the group of 7 days that makes up a biblical week. And again, we have the moon, which established the month, and the sun and the moon, which establish the year. And of course, the stars as well, as we will study in Module 2, they're very, very important in the creation of God. As we have seen in previous studies, the Creator, when he mentioned time, space, and matter, we can see from astronomy, physics, and chemistry combined with mathematics that he intends to share with us how he created the firmament of the heaven. And this is a very beautiful gift of his to share with us, not only from astronomy, astrophysics, chemistry, and mathematics, but the fact that his calendar has been set up in the firmament of the heaven, and no one can tamper with it. Part B, Module 2, we are looking now at the geography of the sky, and we are comparing the International Astronomical Union list versus the biblical Mazzaroth list. In contemporary astronomy, 88 constellations are recognized, 12 cardinal and 76 decan. Each constellation is a region of the sky, and together they cover the entire celestial sphere with their boundaries adopted officially by the International Astronomical Union, or the IAU, in 1928 and published in 1930. You will find the link where you can look at the designated constellations with their names and meanings. However, this study is based on the biblical 48 constellations in their seasons, which is called the Mazzaroth, 12 cardinal, and 36 decan. We choose not to use the extra 40 decan constellations for this study because the 48 constellation altogether of the Mazzaroth names have been given specifically by the Creator, and the plan of redemption is described in the Mazzaroth. As confirmed by Psalm chapter 147, verse 4, God telleth the number of the stars, he calleth them all by their names. We will be looking also on how to use a planisphere. In astronomy, a planisphere is a star chart analog computing instrument in the form of two adjustable disks that rotate on a common pivot. It can be adjusted to display the visible stars for any time and date. It is an instrument to assist in learning how to recognize stars and constellations. Planispheres are available for the north and south hemispheres, and you may choose to buy both of them because some of the decan constellations do not appear both in the north and south hemisphere. So you might need both planispheres in order to study completely the geography of the sky, with the 48 constellation, of course, of the Mazzaroth. The link attached here for David Chandler products is the one we recommend because it's the most simple planisphere that you can work with. Very precise, very accurate, and very, very simple to use. On the left of the slide, we have the ecliptic line, the path of the sun and planets. And these are the planets that travel with the sun every year on the ecliptic line in their order: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Part C of Module 2, we are studying again the biblical geography of the sky based on the Creator's universal laws. Psalm 19, verses 1 to 3, we read, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard." And we continue on the right side of the slide where the Psalm 19, verses 4 to 6, tells us that their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them has he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the end of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. The Creator asked Job, "Who has laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest, or who has stretched the line upon it?" We know that the ecliptic line is an extrapolated line in the sky made up of the 12 cardinal and 36 decan constellations, which marks the annual path of the sun and planets. The moon travels the ecliptic line north and south in 1 month. As we want to attract your attention to the universal laws which are enunciated by the Creator himself and illustrated by the physical laws, this is a perfect example on how to understand this wonderful principle of the Bible to acquire knowledge. As declared in Psalm 19, verses 1 to 3, "The heavens indeed declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork." But it also speaks to us. It also discovers knowledge that we would have never thought about looking into in the sky. And this we can see that it's speaking a message. And that's why we're insisting in using only the Mazzaroth for this study of the geography of the sky, which is purely biblical. I would like to attract your attention to verses 4 to 6 of Psalm 19 in order to understand that wonderful principle of universal laws. Their line is gone out to all the earth, and the Creator himself has set a tabernacle for the sun, S-U-N, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. And we know that the sun going forth makes it all to the end of the heaven, and he has a circuit. The sun has a circuit that he follows carefully, which is the ecliptic line. And this is accomplished, as we saw, in 1 year. This language is very, very much the same language as the sanctuary, which we find in Daniel chapter 8, verse 14, and the 2300 days, and explained in chapter 9, verses 24 to 27. And these studies are available on numbers1317.org. And they do relate to the court, the holy place, the most holy place, and that's what the earth and the heaven is declaring at this time. It's absolutely marvelous what we see here. The tabernacle that the Lord has set, the Creator himself has set, the sanctuary, is for the Son of Righteousness, S-O-N, which according to the prophecies mentioned in the book of Daniel, the bridegroom has entered first in 31 AD in the holy place, and in 1844 in the most holy place. These are the two chambers of the sanctuary. And soon he will finish his work in the most holy, and the time of the end will be accomplished. The time of the end of sin will be accomplished, and he can come out, and he can come and bring his people now with him to heaven, where they can dwell with him, for this is the promise he has made to them. It's a wonderful, wonderful study when you applied yourself to it. And this line that is mentioned again twice in the Psalm 19 and Job 38 is an extrapolated line in the sky, which is made up of the 12 cardinal constellation and the 36 decan constellation. And this line marks the annual path of the sun and planets, the moon traveling the ecliptic line north and south in 1 month. Very important to remember those details. Again, as we saw earlier, the Lord himself says that he gave the names to the stars. Isaiah chapter 40 verse 26 confirms Psalm 147 verse 4, lift up your eyes on high, and behold, who hath created these things, that bringeth out their host by number. He called them all by names, by the greatness of his might, for that he is strong in power, not one faileth. Surely it does confirm that God telleth the number of the stars, he calleth them all by their names. And that's why we took the time to edit the IAU list, or the International Astronomical Union list, which we saw was published in 1930, in order to illustrate the major value of the Mazzaroth. The two links here below, one of them is the original list, and the other one has been edited to show precisely the Mazzaroth 48 constellations as we are studying right now. As we look at the slide on the left, again, we are giving you the ecliptic line, which is the path of the sun and the planets, with the 12 cardinal constellations in their seasons, which we choose to not only use the Greek name, but also the Hebrew name, which makes a major difference between the science of astronomy, and the pseudoscience of astrology. And in this study, we're trying to use more the Hebrew names in order to make that major difference. Betula, Virgo, is followed in season by Meoznaim, Libra, Akrav, or Scorpio, Keshet, Sagittarius, Gedi, Capricorn, Deli, Aquarius, Dagim, Pisces, Tole, Aries, Shor, Taurus, Theomem, Gemini, Sartan, Cancer, and Ariel, Leo. For further study, you may want to refer to the link here on the Mazzaroth, which is an extended study of what we're doing here on this biblical geography of the sky. In part C of the geography of the sky, we looked at the spiritual or the universal laws enunciated and illustrated to the physical laws of nature. In part D now, we will be doing reverse. We will be looking at the physical laws of nature or the physical laws in the sky, and we will be applying or enunciating the universal laws that are being taught. Part D covers the Mazzaroth and the woman in the wilderness. Again, Psalm 19, verse 1, the heavens declare the glory of God. And verse 7, the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. So these two principles of physical to spiritual, concrete to abstract, are very well expressed here. Starting with Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. There appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Here is the perfect description of the Mazzaroth in Hebrew, which is a garland of crown, and the sun, the moon, and the stars, again forming the biblical calendar, are brought back here in Revelation 12, verse 1. This woman, as we follow her pathway to the book of Revelation chapter 12, bears a child, and the remnant of her seed is found also throughout the book of Revelation chapter 12, where first she flies in the wilderness for 1260 years, and now in chapter 12, verse 14, she's given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into a place where she's nourished for a time, times and a half time from the face of the serpent. This time, times and a half times is a literal time, and this has to do with 3.5 years. And this is all declared through the Mazzaroth. And the reason now that we have passed from 1260 years to 1260 days, or time, times and a half time, or 3.5 years, is because of Revelation chapter 12, verse 17 and verse 12, where the dragon himself is wroth with the woman, went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God, which are declared again in Psalm 19, and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Because, according to verse 12, he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And this remnant of her seed is found in Revelation 14, verse 4. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the firstfruits unto God and to the Lamb. As we're bringing these wonderful universal laws now through the physical laws of the Mazzaroth, we are discovering more and more a battle, a controversy, and it's coming to an end. Because the dragon, Satan, the old serpent, knows he has but a short time, so he's going to counterattack this woman even more than ever before in history, and forced her, if possible, to worship the dragon, worship the beast, that no man might buy or sell, save he that has the mark, according to Revelation 13, verse 4 and 17. And this mark, although many people have speculated what kind of a mark it will be, we know that it's a mark of worship, who we will worship. And this will involve, of course, economy, because you cannot buy or sell, but it will be, again, a physical and a spiritual battle, a concrete and an abstract battle. And again, this is very well expressed through the Mazzaroth as we look at the cardinal and the deacon constellation meaning. We discover that though it applies to the plan of redemption, to the Redeemer's work, which he has accomplished for us 2,000 years ago, now the redeemed, the woman of Revelation 12:14 is taking her place, and she will walk wheresoever the Lamb has walked, and she will be at last vindicating his wonderful character. And this is actually described very clearly in the Mazzaroth if we follow step by step the woman and the seed through Betula. Betula, Virgo, the virgin, the promised seed of the woman, Genesis 3:15 has finally come, and Coma, Centaurus and Bootes, the deacon of the constellation, the cardinal constellation of Betula, described such. Coma, the desired child of all nations. Centaurus, the despised sin offering. Bootes, the coming one. And again, the seed of the woman will go through the same steps as her Redeemer. Second, Meo's name, or Libra, the price that covers. Southern Cross is the cutting off. Victima is the lamb that was slain. Corona is the royal crown that he received over his victory. Same promise to the woman. Number 3, Aqua, which is Scorpio or Equator, the wounding, the conflict, the war. And the deacon of that cardinal constellation, Hercules, Ophiuchus, serpent, the message is the mighty one, which entered into a conflict with the serpent holder, the accursed. Kashat, number 4, Sagittarius, the gracious archer, conquering and conquer. And the very meaning of this constellation, as you can see, as a message. And that's the spiritual, that's the abstract that we need to understand. These are the universal laws that are taught to the physical laws of the Mazzaroth. Lyra or Lear is praise. Aquila, the eagle, the wounding. Ara, the end of the curse. And Draco, the dragon, the punished enemy. So here is the conqueror and the redeemed also who are conquering through their Redeemer. Gedi, Capricorn number 5, the goat of atonement slain for the redeemed. Again, all of this wonderful sanctuary language is given to us just like Psalm 19 says about what is declared in the heaven. And listen to the language. Sagitta, Delphinius, Aquila, the deacon constellation of the cardinal constellation of Gedi, arrow destroying, pouring out, and the wounded eagle. And don't forget, the women were given 2 wings of a great eagle. And if you study carefully, as mentioned in the previous slide, you can study the book of Daniel. We have given you the reference, the link, and eagle is mentioned in the Bible and in the book of Daniel, and you will find out what is the meaning of that eagle. Delhi, number 6, Aquarius, the living waters poured for the redeemed. Again, a language of the sanctuary. The laver cries the living waters. Pisces, Australis, Pegasus, and Cygnus. Again, the deacon constellation for the cardinal constellation of Delhi. Thirsty fish, the chief horse, swan, blesser who returns. A message to the bridegroom, to his wife, from the bridegroom to his bride coming through. It's wonderful. Dagim, Number 7, company of congregation redeemed blessed. The deacon Andromeda and Cepheus, chained humiliated woman, and the crowned king. Again, the bridegroom and his bride. Number 8, Tole, Aris, the lamb that was slain, prepared for victory. Cetus, Cassiopeia, and Perseus, the deacon constellation. Sea monster, overthrown, bound. Freed enthroned woman, preparing for her husband. Redeemer, marriage of the Lamb. This is the actual definition or explanation that the Lord himself gave to the stars when he created them at the beginning. He called them all by their names, and he also gave them an important meaning which you will not find in the additional constellation by the IAU. Perseus is delivering is redeemed. Again, promises, beautiful promises. Sure. Number 9, Taurus, preeminent chief, Messiah, coming to rule. And the deacon constellation, Auriga, Pleiades, Orion, and Eridanus, the shepherd, safety for the redeemed in the day of thy wrath. The precious jewels, the 7 stars, which are the Pleiades. Orion, the mighty prince, the glorious one, the light breaking forth in the person of the Redeemer. So we have had the water, the living water with Delhi, Aquarius, number 6, and now we have the light. Again, another sanctuary language. We go from the laver to the candlestick. Beautiful, beautiful lessons. Eridanus, the judgment, the river of fire, the wrath breaking forth for his enemies. Again, the fire. We have the candlestick here, but we also have the judgment, the most holy place, the work that Christ has been in accomplishing since 1844, according to the prophecy of Daniel 8:14 and 9:24-27. You must study these wonderful prophecies in order to understand this wonderful message of the stars. Number 10, Theomame or Gemini, the united twine, twofold nature of the king. The deacon constellation, Lepus, mad air, offender confounded, enemy trodden underfoot. Canis minor, conqueror, victorious, exalted redeemer. Canis major, Sirius, coming prince of princes, victorious guardian. Again, wonderful, wonderful promises. Number 11, Saturn or Cancer, cattlefold, rest secured, resting place. Ursa minor and Ursa major, which are the deacon constellation of Saturn, the stronghold of the saved, little fold. Ursa major, assembled, resting place of the sheep. Argo, the ship, holy city, redeemed, safe at home. And if you notice the list of IAU, they have wanted to remove Argo, but Argo is a very, very important constellation in the cardinal constellation of Saturn, because it's the ship, the holy city, coming down at the third coming, and now Christ is making the earth new, and the redeemed are safe at home, back to an earth made new, according to Revelation 21:1. Ariel, Leo, the last constellation here, the cardinal constellation of the Mazzaroth that forms the ecliptic line, and its deacon constellation. We have the Lion of Judah, he who rends the enemy. Hydra, the abhorred old serpent, the devil destroyed. Crater, the cup of wrath poured upon the serpent. And Corvus, raven, birds of prey devouring the serpent. What a blessed hope we have. We have all the promises that we need here in order to see the end of this great controversy. The stars reveal it, the plan of salvation revealed in the sanctuary also is giving us this hope that we are the winners, we are the redeemed, the one that have been redeemed by the Redeemer. who first came 2,000 years ago and is coming back very soon for his bride. And the dragon at last, the old serpent, Satan, Lucifer, and his fallen angel who have rebelled for no reason will finally be destroyed, and the Heavenly Father be vindicated at last through his people. This is the wonderful message of the Mazzaroth, and this is why we need to understand it more than ever through the 12 cardinal constellation and the 36 decan constellation. Part E of Module 2, we are looking at the connection now between the Planishere and the Mazzaroth, and more specifically, Betula Virgo, the woman of Revelation 12. First, we will be looking at how to use a Planishere, and in order to do so, you need to hold the Planishere in your hand and turn the wheel, as we indicate here on the left of the slide, turn the wheel of the Planishere on the left going down, or right going up. The stars all rise from the east from the point of view of the Earth, so you will want to line up now the Planishere with Virgo, and since it appears always in the east first, turn the wheel either down on the left or up on the right, and adjust Virgo as it's shown on the image here with the red arrow to the east, and Virgo should appear as you look at the bottom of this Planishere in end of January, February approximately. This Planishere that is shown here at 40-50 degrees north latitude, this is a north hemisphere Planishere. You also have it adjusted here, it shows north, and that's the horizon. And in the back of your Planishere, you have the south horizon. And it's important to have a knowledge of both, because as you travel with the Planishere now, we travel with the Ecliptic Line. The Equator Line, as you see on the Planishere, is a full line, which is a reflection of the line of the Earth, an extrapolation. But the Ecliptic Line is a broken line, and it's indicated ecliptic. And this is the line that we call extrapolation, because we can follow month by month as we turn down to the left or up to the right. You will see Virgo, and as you travel now traveling towards the west, so bring the wheel down to the left, the next constellation in their season, which is, we're looking only at cardinal constellation right now. If you look at the left side of the slide, you will see the cardinal, the decan again, and their meaning. So we want to look at Libra, or male's name, and this would appear on the Planishere and in the sky, of course, in February, March. So if we turn again further down, we will see the next constellation, the cardinal constellation of Aquarius, which is Scorpio, in March, April. And you continue the exercise with the 12 constellations, following carefully one by one these constellations, these cardinal constellations, like our short, which is Sagittarius. You will see in April, May, you can see. But if you cannot find it on the north horizon, you just need to turn the Planishere and look carefully, and you will find it on the south horizon. For example, Scorpius is much easier to be seen in Libra, and even Virgo on the south horizon. It's still the north hemisphere, but it's a different position that you're taking in looking at the stars. As you go to the next one with Sagittarius, or short, again, you may not see it in the north horizon, so turn to the south horizon and you will see it's right there following Scorpius and Libra. And again, continue the exercise. Sagittarius quadrant would be April, May. Getty or Capricorn is May, June. And again, I turn the Planishere. You have to have a Planishere in your hand in order to really understand it. And it can be seen actually at the edge of the ecliptic line on the north horizon and very easily in the south horizon. So always follow the broken line of the ecliptic line, and you will see that they line up perfectly on that ecliptic line, or which forms the ecliptic line of those cardinal constellations. The next one would be Delhi, which is Aquarius, and it can be seen in June, July, and that can be seen easily in the north horizon. Then we go to Dagim or Pisces, the seventh cardinal constellation in its season, and you will see it around July, August. Again, it's very interesting to see them traveling and forming literally the ecliptic line, and that's what the study is all about. So you do them one by one, and you will arrive now we are at the eighth one, which is Eros, again in Tole, which is in Hebrew. And as you travel, if you cannot see it on the north, always turn on the south horizon, and you will make sure to see them there. So you continue the exercise, and you will arrive now at the seventh month, which is Taurus or Shore, September, October. And the next one is Theomame, Gemini. And then Sartan, Cancer, and Ariel, Leo. And now you have done the whole year in Gregorian reckoning, so which carries you, as we started with Virgo, for a specific purpose, because we're studying the woman of Revelation 12. You could start with any of them and then follow them through in the sky with your planisphere. But in this case, because we are studying the connection between the planisphere and the Mazzaroth, we are working with Virgo Betula as our first cardinal constellation. Now, as we are looking at the constellation now, the cardinal constellation in their season with the biblical calendar, I invite you to look again on the left of the slide, where we're going to look at Virgo Betula, which is again January, February Gregorian reckoning according to the planisphere, where we're back at now once we're finished with Leo. And this would correspond to the 11th month of the biblical calendar. How do we know that? Well, it's simply because every month of the biblical calendar starts with the new moon. And the new moon is not necessarily on the 1st of January or the 1st of February. So January, February would be a good balance to be said that it's the 11th month. Then male's name or Libra would be the 12th month, corresponding to February, March Gregorian reckoning. And Aquarius, which is Scorpio, would be the first month. And this is for a common year. We will not touch on the embolismic year right now, which is an additional month, which the moon itself adapt every year according to the solar cycle, and will add a little bit longer over traveling so that it can adjust the whole year. So March, April, Gregorian reckoning would be the first month for the common year. And that's why also March, being that we are taking care of the Passover in April, it cannot be the 1st of March because it would be too early for the Passover, which is always the 14th of the first month. And the earlier you can have a Passover, and we studied that in another website in another study, that the Passover cannot be in Israel any earlier than the 9th of April or the second week of April because of the barley. So this is another entire study that we invite you to check on with those links that we are giving you here. And it's very important that you look at them in order to understand the biblical calendar. This study cannot be done with the planisphere and the Mazzaroth unless you have a good understanding of the biblical calendar. And those two video, which we give you the link here, which we have prepared specifically for the understanding of the biblical calendar, is given to you here. So you might do well. We do not know the level of understanding that you have of the biblical calendar, and even before you want to understand the Mazzaroth, that you have a thorough understanding of the biblical calendar. And this is why we're introducing it here, but this is not something that should be new to you. So therefore, when we come to Scorpio or Aquarius, the first month, we have the feast of Leviticus 23 here that are shown: Passover, unleavened bread, first fruit. So these are the three feasts, the three spring feasts that we find in the first month, corresponding to Aquarius or Scorpio. Then the next one, continuing again, Kashat or Sagittarius would be the second month, corresponding to April, May, Gregorian reckoning. This is how we present it always. And then we come to the third month, which is Gadi, Capricorn, corresponding to May, June, Gregorian reckoning. And the third biblical month is always the month of Pentecost. And because it corresponds to the new moon, we don't have a specific date like the 25th of December, for example, in the Gregorian reckoning for the Roman Catholic feast. But this one is basically the biblical calendar of Leviticus 23. So we follow the biblical feast. So we saw the Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruit is always on the first biblical month, and Pentecost is always on the third biblical month. And as we continue with the fourth month with Delhi, the fifth month with Dagim or Pisces, the sixth month would be Tole or Eros, and now we arrive at the seventh biblical month again, which is a very important month for the biblical feast of Leviticus 23, Shar or Taurus. And we have September, October, Gregorian reckoning, the Feast of Trumpets, which is always the first of the seventh month. Atonement is the 10th of the seventh month. And Tabernacles, the first and the last day of Tabernacle on the seventh month. You can follow those clearly with Leviticus 23. And again, make sure to listen to those videos to increase your knowledge of the biblical calendar. And then, of course, the rest of the year would be corresponding again to the Gregorian reckoning of October, November for the 8th month, November, December for the 9th month, which correspond to Sartan or Cancer. And the last month, the 10th month here shown, would be Aries or Leo for December, January. And then the cycle starts again when you go to the left side of this slide. It's very simple, and if you use the Planishere, you will get acquainted with not only the cardinal constellation, but you will see in their season when they appear in the sky. And this Planishere is scientific, so you can really, really rely on it, especially if you want to observe the stars in the night, the constellation in the night. These are scientific constellations. The next step that we would like you to take is looking at now the Deacon constellation, and through these now the cardinal constellation, which we have started with Virgo. That's a very beautiful experience to do, is to search for now the constellation Deacon, which are appearing each month according to their cardinal constellation. For example, we will not do them all. This is a good exercise for you to do with your Planishere. If you look at Coma, Centaurus, and Bootes, for example, with Virgo, again, back to Virgo, January, February, Gregorian reckoning, the 11th month, you can see these constellations in their season, and it's like a pie. The Earth, basically, when you look at the 360 degrees, which is a circle, just like the Earth and the planet form a 360 degrees. So if you were to divide in half, that would be 180 degrees. But if you take 360 and you divide them in 12 pieces, exactly like you cut a pie, then you will get every one of them have a certain amount of degrees. And in them, you will find those constellations, those Deacon constellations. So I encourage you to follow through with it and try to find them. They're very obvious. And if you cannot see them on the north horizon, don't forget to look on the south horizon. Sometimes it's not easy to remember at the beginning when we get to study the planisphere. But you can see that the planisphere is a tool, and it's basically, it's not even digital, it's simply manual, and it's very precise, and it's a very beautiful tool, especially if you have a red filter flashlight at night. You can actually literally see those beautiful constellations in their season. One in particular that I love is, and I can recognize it anywhere, and you can recognize it anywhere in the north hemisphere, and if you are in the south hemisphere, it's Orion. Orion appears in the sky in the north hemisphere to announce the feast, the fall feast, just like Scorpio or Aquarius will announce the spring feast. So you get accustomed to this, and you will kind of start recognizing in the sky those wonderful constellations. And Orion, which is shown on the seventh month under Shore or Taurus, you will see it, and it's the Hunter, and it's really, really a beautiful, beautiful constellation. It's a Deacon constellation in the cardinal constellation of Shore or Taurus. So get familiar with your constellation here on the planisphere, and you can literally recognize them when you look in the sky. And the way to put it in the sky, of course, you have to put the planisphere above your head, or if you're familiar with the direction, you know where Polaris is, which is the center here of the planisphere, then you can easily recognize them, especially when you have some, like I said, with Orion, which I am familiar with. I know when Orion appears, that's the seventh month, that's the month of the fall feast. So they do connect with the cardinal constellation and the Deacon constellation. They connect with the biblical months, and they do identify those beautiful months. So again, it's the sun, the moon, and the stars that makes up the beautiful biblical calendar. So now, as we have seen earlier too, there is a message of redemption in the sky. And we have seen that Betula Virgo is a very, very important cardinal constellation. And this is the one that announced the virgin with the promised seed of the woman of Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. And that's where we are able to recognize the desired child of all nations, the despised sin offering, and the coming one. And as we have looked at it from the point of view of the woman in Revelation 12, the redeemed, the 144,000, the virgin of Revelation 14, which is very well mentioned in there, that the 144,000, which are the sealed one. If you look at chapter 6 and 7 of Revelation, the sealing is taking place, and we find that woman ready, that church, that remnant church that hides in the wilderness for 1260 years and then 1260 days, because the dragon, the devil, knows he has a short time. She can be recognized throughout the whole planisphere, the whole constellations of the cardinal and the Deacon as we travel through the year. And the step that we want to take now, as we have seen where Virgo appears in the sky in the east, in the north hemisphere in January, February, now we want to show you precisely, and it is possible to calculate that from the fact that Betula, Virgo, appears in January, February in the east. 9 months later, which would be the gestation of how long a child, once it's conceived, how long it takes in a normal human birth, you can see that from the 11th month, 9 months later, it can actually be demonstrated that Messiah was born in September, October at the Feast of Tabernacle. And he will return through Orion at the Feast of Tabernacle. He died on the cross, and he fulfilled the beautiful feast of Passover, unleavened bread at first fruit in the spring in 31 AD, according to the wonderful prophecy of Daniel 8:14 and Daniel 9:24-27, which we explain in numbers1317.org. That's another study. But these are beautiful information, beautiful truth that you need to know to have a full understanding of the Mazzaroth and the connection with the Planishere. So as we go now to the next slide, we will demonstrate to you why we believe that Virgo Betula, the 11th month constellation, according to the biblical calendar, January, February, Gregorian reckoning, can bring us to the birth of Christ at the Feast of Tabernacle in the fall. We will go now to the next slide to pursue this wonderful study. Part F, Module 2 of the study on astronomy. We are looking now at the connection between the Planishere, the Mazzaroth, and the course of Abia. This is in order to establish an evidence of the birth of John the Baptist and the birth of Messiah. There are more evidence that can be found in the video that we submit on the birth of Messiah at the Feast of Tabernacle, which you can look at it on the link that we have submitted here. We will concentrate on these slides on the study of the course of Abia, which does offer a very, very important evidence of when Messiah was born in the light of the birth of John the Baptist. Luke chapter 1 verse 5 we read, "There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the course of Abia." This is a very, very important detail which will help us to establish a very, very grounded evidence on the birth of John the Baptist and the birth of Messiah. We will look now at 1 Chronicles chapter 24. 1 Chronicles chapter 24 is the division of the priesthood, the high priesthood, which David did before establishing through his son the sanctuary in Jerusalem. And as David was looking at the priesthood, the high priesthood of the son of Aaron, of the descendant of Eleazar and Ithamar, because Aaron had 4 sons, but 2 of them, Nadab and Abihu, died before their father and had no children, according to verse 2 of chapter 24 of 1 Chronicles, and we know their story. David then counted the number of descendants of Eleazar and Ithamar to find out that they were both distributed between Zadok and Abimelech. And we're told here that the descendants of Eleazar were 16, according to verse 4, and the descendant of Ithamar were 8, for a total of 24. So David then proceeded in dividing them by lot and came up with 24 divisions. In order to find those divisions, I invite you to read them for yourself. We have presented them here on this graphic to make it simpler. You will find out that there were 24 courses, but we only have 12 months to work with when we're talking specifically with the common year again here for the biblical month. So therefore, you will have 2 courses per month. So follow carefully. You can find these names. We start with chapter, again, 24, 1 Chronicle 24, and you have to start with verse 7 in order to read those courses according to the chief man of the descendant of both Eleazar and Ithamar. We will spare you those names. You can read them for yourself, except we would like to attract your attention to June and July Gregorian reckoning. So we have March, April, which would be the first month, as we saw, from the Planishere and the Mazzaroth, Scorpio, Aquarius. And we have now, we go to the 4th month from this direction, June, July, And we come to Akaz and Abia. And Abia is the 8th course. Abia actually means 8. This is the one we're interested in. This is the evidence that we have been offered in Luke chapter 1, verse 5. Meaning that having 24 courses, having 12 months, there were 2 courses per month that would come and served in Jerusalem at the temple. And we're told that Zechariah was of the course of Abia. As we look now further into this, we also read the story in Luke chapter 1, how Elizabeth was promised to the angel. The angel promised Zechariah that his wife was going to conceive in her old age. And as they returned home, this happened, as it's explained in chapter 1, verse 24. After those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived and hid herself 5 months afterwards. And that would have been, by the time they came back home, we can simply say that it would have been July, August, Gregorian reckoning. And we have explained how the biblical month functions because of the new moon. It's not always the month always correspond to the Gregorian reckoning as the first of the month. It could be any time during that month. So therefore, the way we calculate the biblical months in order to convert with the Gregorian reckoning is always a double month for that purpose. So as we look at the time that she have conceived, which would have been more like in the month of July, August, and if you want to calculate it, the best way is to put it on your finger. This is the way I find simpler. So you will see here on the graphic, we are showing when John the Baptist, John's birth, follow carefully the column, where he would have been conceived. As we said, Abia corresponds to June, July. So if it would have been around July, August, then you would have the first month around that time. So July, August, all the way to the 9th month when the child is conceived would have brought you to the first biblical month, the 9th, when the child was born, the 9th month would have been at Passover, March, April, Gregorian reckoning. So you can calculate it. It's quite simple. So you go July, August, August, September, September, October, October, November, November, December, December, January, January, February, February, March, and March, April. That's how we do it. So this would be when John the Baptist would have been born. And of course, we can continue here again. There is another evidence in Luke chapter 1, verse 36. The angel Gabriel appears to Mary to announce that she was going to conceive a child, and that child will be Messiah. So as he was talking to Mary, he also told her in Luke chapter 1, verse 36, we read, "Behold, thy cousin Elizabeth, she has also conceived a son in her old age, and this is the 6th month with her, who was called barren." So the 6 months. So by the time that Mary conceives, we see her that she arose in those days and she went to the hill country in the city of Judah, and went to meet with her cousin Elizabeth. They were a family. And when Elizabeth, we read in verse 41, heard the salutation of Mary, the babe leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Ghost. So Mary had conceived by then. And when she came to visit her cousin, that would have been, as it shows in our graphic here again, look at the 6th month of John's conception. That would have been December, January, or Leo, Arie. And we come into Mary's visit where she would have conceived, and that would be her 1st month. Again, because the Gregorian reckoning differ from the biblical months, composed of always double months, depending when the new moon appears. We start here again with January, but it could be December, January, January, February. And yet we believe that it is definitely easy to calculate when you go that route. So we're going to go January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, and September, October, as we show on our graphic, would have been the 9th month of the Messiah being conceived and born, which will bring us to September, October, which is the time of the Feast of Tabernacles. And in the Jewish economy, it has been actually believed that Christ, the light, would have been born at the first day of Tabernacle. So therefore, we conclude that John the Baptist was conceived in July, August, Gregorian reckoning corresponding to Dagim or Pisces, and the Mazzaroth, which brings us to the 9th month in March, April at Aquarius or Scorpio, and this would be the first biblical month of the biblical year, where Jesus would have been conceived in January, February, and we will bring it up to, when we calculate it carefully, we bring it up to the 9th month corresponding to September, October at the Feast of Tabernacles, which will make a lot of sense as we study further the biblical calendar, which is based on the book of Leviticus chapter 23 and the feast, the biblical feast of Leviticus 23. And this is a perfect application of the appointed time and Messiah and John the Baptist being both born at the John the Baptist Spring Feast and Messiah Fall Feast. In part A of Module 2, we saw in Genesis chapter 1 verses 14 to 19 the universal laws of the biblical calendar enunciated based on the sun, the moon, and the stars. We also saw the Planishere and the wonderful Mazzaroth, which guides us towards some new light, some new truth that has been hidden away and now are open for our understanding. In part G, we are looking at the biblical calendar restoration movement. Worship him that made heaven and earth. A brief history of the biblical calendar, the Creator's worship time, is found in the Grace Amadon collection, Crucifixion Date, Part 5. These are excerpts. The original Hebrew calendar in organized Israel was founded upon both forms of year. Its months were determined by the course of the moon, while the lunar year, 354 days and decimals, paced along with the sun's motion of 365 days and decimals by means of the harvest festivals. Thus, during the Old Testament time till the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, the biblical calendar and the festivals of Leviticus 23, including the 70 Sabbath, were dependent upon the course of the moon, the horn crescent to start the month, and upon the influence of the sun on the harvest, the barley more specifically. Every 2 or 3 years, the solar year exceeded the lunar by about a month, and the month was inserted. And that was done naturally by the moon, actually, and it is still to this day, making a leap year of 13 months, also called an embollismic year. We have here an image of the biblical calendar composed of 7 days, the first day of the month always being the new moon, and in Hebrew, new moon or moon and month are the same word, Kodesh or Odesh. The first working week would start with the 2nd of the month, being the first day of the working week, and will finish with the 7th day on the 8th of the month. The second week would start on the 9th and finish with the 15th, The 16th, which is the third week, would be up to the 22nd, and the 23rd, which would compose the whole week again, the fourth week, finishing with the 29th. The 30th day is also determined by the moon. Depending how far she is from the earth or how close it is from the earth, this is determined by actually astronomical and mathematical data, which are possible to find when you visit USNO or Her Majesty Observatory. The biblical calendar, therefore, is composed from the barley harvest as a season, the lunisolar cycles, the new moon horned crescent, the stars, the new moon always making the first day of the month, and the 70 Sabbaths always being on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th. The moon phases act like witnesses as the horned crescent starts the new month. The first quarter will occur during the first week of the month, close to the Sabbath, like an announcement to the Sabbath, but not on the Sabbath day. The full moon is also found in the second week of the month, just before the Sabbath. And then the last quarter would be the third week to finish with the conjunction on the fourth week, and the cycle will start again. Again, as we mentioned, there are 29 days in a month, but sometimes because the moon is closer or further from the earth, you can add a 30-day, and that 30-day can be kept in between the Sabbath and the new moon as an additional day of being with God and taking time to study. And we can do some secular work on that day. However, some people choose to take it as what you could call a long weekend. There has been some changes in the biblical calendar to today, and it has become more or less the Lucifer worship time rather than the Creator's worship time. And this is also found in the Grace Amadon collection, Crucifixion Date Part 5, where we read that under the Roman decree of Nicaea in AD 325, barley harvest was replaced by the spring equinox, which makes quite a bit of a difference in the reckoning of the biblical calendar. We're told that from the time of the Nicene decree until the present day, it has been passed on from generation to generation that the Hebrew Passover was at the first full moon after the equinox of spring. The tables of the modern Jewish calendar follow this plan. Many historians, both ancient and modern, have taken it for granted that the Hebrews had always kept their Passover at this time, and that such was therefore the case in the days of Christ. But it was not so. We encourage you to visit the Biblical Calendar Restoration website, biblicalcalendarmovement.org, and encourage you to help us restore the true biblical calendar by sharing this website with as many people as you can and on social media. In Module 1, we learned that astronomy is an applied science, and it declares the glory and infinity of God. Astronomy teaches the celestial objects such as sun, planets, moon, stars, galaxies, comets, and meteors. However, in Module 2, we learned that astronomy is the science of time, the Creator worship time. The sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets and their cycles are the clock of the sphere the Creator made in order to reckon His biblical calendar as enunciated through the universal laws found in the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, and the book of Numbers, chapter 28 and 29. Thus, Part H, Module 2, is the sanctuary calendar for April and October 2020 Gregorian reckoning, and the 1st and 7th biblical months shown together based on the method restored by the Millerites in 1844, and as mentioned according to the book of Leviticus chapter 23 and the book of Numbers chapters 28 and 29. In order to understand how we came up with these data, you need to understand and read the Grace Amadon collection, which we present here, the 6-part series, as well as visiting our library at 144,000teachers.org, where you will find the biblical calendar for the years 2020 to 2030, as well as some wonderful videos, one of them being Standing on Trial for You Believe, the biblical calendar, and see how you understand it following this video. And this will increase your knowledge if you do not have any. And the second one we encourage you to read, to study, is the Breaking the Code of the biblical calendar, which has allowed us to do these calendar as shown here of April 2020 and October 2020, as well as all the years following up to 2030. So we do encourage you to study for yourself. It's not one little slide here that will be able to present to you the knowledge that has been hidden away in the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planet. And they're not just to be looked at and admired. They reveal a wonderful secret, as you saw, with the Planishere, the Mazzaroth, and bringing us all the way to Revelation chapter 12. Continuing with the sanctuary calendar and part I of module 2, we present the months of May to October 2020 Gregorian reckoning along with the biblical months. And again, our method is based on the method restored by the Millerites in 1844 and according to the book of Leviticus chapter 23 and the book of Numbers chapters 28 and 29. In part J of the sanctuary calendar for module 2, to whet your appetite on wanting to study more of the biblical calendar, we show here the months of April and October 2030, which are the 1st and the 7th biblical months. And again, it's based on the method restored by the Millerite in 1844 and according to the book of Leviticus chapter 23 and Numbers chapters 28 and 29. And though to you it may seem like a very, very difficult way to understand the biblical calendar, it is actually quite simple. It's complex, but not complicated. We recommend definitely that you start studying the Grace Amadon collection, as again presented here, and the other links we offered in the slides presenting all of the material that you can find in order to understand these calculations. Part K, Module 2, the only calendar which meets the rules of evidence. Is it biblical, astronomical, chronological, and historical? Is the calendar of the sanctuary. From the library at 144,000teachers.org, again, you will find the biblical calendar for the years 2020 to the years 2030, which is the lunisolar barley harvest calendar, always presented versus the solar Gregorian calendar reckoning. Again, the videos that we encourage you to peruse are biblical calendar on trial, showing again the evidence that it meets all of the biblical, astronomical, chronological, historical, and even spirit of prophecy evidence. The other one is Breaking the Code, which is a computation mathematically and with the astronomy, the science of astronomy, on how to calculate the biblical calendar. Another important study is the synchronism and chronology of the Bible. And it's a study that is based on the change of calendar that we are told in the great controversy between Christ and Satan in Daniel 7:25. It will be a fight for worship. And this is demonstrated through synchronism and chronology of the Bible. Another video you will not want to miss, again, is Christ was born at the Feast of Tabernacles, not on December 25th. And of course, the wonderful study of the Mazzaroth and the woman of Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, with the 12 constellations in their season, the gospel in the stars. Make sure to study also the biblical lunisolar barley harvest calendar under the Millerite movement, the 10th day of the 7th month, the Day of Atonement, as presented through the Grace Amadon collection parts 1 to 6. And this is actually the study of the Millerite, and now they actually revive and restored by the grace of God the true biblical calendar. Part L of Module 2 is an invitation to answer the call offered in Isaiah chapter 58, verse 12. And they that shall be of thee shall build the old waste places. Thou shalt raise up the foundations of many generations, and thou shalt be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of paths to dwell in. Who we are, this movement is sponsored by Christian biblical calendar adherents who have studied and practiced the holy convocations of Leviticus 23 for more than 30 years based on the Millerite movement and the Great Day of Atonement of October 22nd, 1844. The Bible, astronomy, chronology, and history, along with the Spirit of Prophecy and the Grace Amadon collection, have been our sources of inspiration and guidance. Join us by helping us to restore the true biblical calendar by sharing this website with as many people as you can and on social media. And do not forget the plan for 2020 to 2030 is to expand this restoration mighty movement to make known the Creator's worship time through His calendar. And it is to counteract the false present-day calendar reform movement by teaching the Creator's calendar, and to participate in our symposium, conference calls, workshops, and seminars. Contact us for a schedule of events or further information at biblicalcalendarmovement@gmail.com. We even offer to you the phone number for Canada and the USA, and the same number can be used for WhatsApp for international phone calls. Remember, we are to educate, 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 and agitate, agitate, agitate. This should be our focus at this time, restoring the worship time of our Creator. Nothing else should attract our attention. This is the true Creator worship time through His calendar, the calendar of the sanctuary. Revelation 14, verses 7 and 8 is our guideline. This is our teaching at this time of earth history. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel, to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, and kindred, and tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come, and worship Him that made heaven and earth, and the sea, and the fountains of waters. This is the call for Laodicea to wake up, the seventh church, the final church that is to accomplish a mighty work upon the earth, a mighty movement. This study was prepared for Generation 144K by www 144,000teachers.org.